African response to colonial rule. The imposition of colonial rule in East Africa did not go unchallenged. Africans responded to the loss of their sovereignty in two broad ways. The first way was collaboration. This is where African societies or individuals cooperated with the colonial powers in the establishment of colonial rule. Collaboration can be grouped into two parts: adaptive collaboration and mercenaries collaboration. Adaptive collaboration is where societies that admired the ways of the white man allowed him to use their land as bases for the extension of colonial rule to other areas like Uganda. The mercenary class included Africans who assisted the colonial powers as recruits in the colonial armies in anticipation of petty goods or presents. A good example is of Semei Kakungulu. The reasons for collaboration: some societies collaborated with the Europeans in order to get military support against their enemies, who were threatening their independence. Toro and Uganda, for example, collaborated with the British in order to fight Bunyoro, as this was the only viable way of preserving their independence. Others looked at collaboration as a progressive and associated it with civilization, modernity, and Christianity. This was the view of Mutesa I of Uganda. Such people or societies looked at resistance as a sign of backwardness and being against the force of development and progress. Some still collaborated because of natural calamities and disasters. The Kikuyu, Chaga, Masai, and Usambara, for example, collaborated because they had been hit and weakened by disasters like famine and diseases like smallpox. They had realized that they could not stage any serious resistance to the white man. Collaboration was also due to the fear of the military might of the colonial powers. With the Maxim gun, many African societies like the Shamba and the Maasai, who had weak military position, were put at a disadvantage. Collaboration was therefore the only way they could survive. Collaboration was also due to the influence of the missionaries. Their beautiful teachings had weakened the hearts and minds of Africans. Many converts, in fact, thought that colonial rule was willed by God and hence became collaborators. For example, the Protestants in Uganda. Individual collaborators like Semei Kakungulu and Apollo Kagwa were simply opportunists who were after advancing their selfish interest and expected to gain material from the colonialists in terms of war loot, old clothes, and creating their own empires. Some African societies collaborated out of ignorance. Such societies thought that the Europeans were just visitors who were here for a short period, but they were mistaken because the white man had come to stay, and by the time they realized it was too late. Some African rulers like Chief Munkwawa had terrorized their people, and as a result, European rule was seen as a blessing. They felt it would be better to be under Europeans than being under African dictators. Such societies ended up embracing European rule. The method used to bring a given society under European rule also terminated its response. If it involved diplomacy, tricks and treaty signing like the 1900 Uganda Agreement, such a society collaborated. Where it involved the use of force like the case was in Bunyoro, it was hard for such a society to collaborate. Fire is answered with fire. Others collaborated because their rivals and neighbors had resisted. Once Bunyoro resisted, Toro collaborated. Toro's Kasagama wanted to see Bunyoro crushed, and once the British showed willingness to do this, they had to get this utmost cooperation. The direction taken by the European invaders also determined the African reaction. For example, Europeans who entered Uganda from the south received a warm welcome, and those who came from the east and the west were seen as enemies and therefore had to be resisted. This is why Bishop Hannington was killed in Usoga. Examples of collaborators in East Africa. Semei Kakungulu. Semei Kakungulu was born in Koch around 1870, but grew up as a page at the Kabaka's court in Uganda. As a younger boy, he joined the Uganda's Royal Army, where he demonstrated that he was a military genius. This earned him the title of a general. With the growing influence of the missionaries at the Kabaka's court, Kakungulu found himself close to the circles of the Christian missionaries who converted him to Christianity and christened him Semei. During the 1888 to 1890 religious war, he joined hands with the Christians to stop Kalema and the Muslims who had taken control of Mengo. This landed him the post of sub-county chief of Chagwe. He confined himself there for some time, encouraging cotton growing, tax payment, and building of roads, all of which were in line with indirect rule. Later he rebelled with Apolo Kagwa for the post of Katikkiro, Chief Minister of Uganda, which he lost to the latter. His political career, however, began to take shape in 1890 when he decided to become an ally of the British for personal gains. He hoped to build his own empire. In the same year, he was placed in charge of the northern conquest Buganda had got from Bunyoro. He proved a competent soldier and administrator that he even became a threat to other Ganda personalities in Uganda. He convinced fellow Baganda that the best way to fight Bunyoro was to ally with the British, and he was willing to do anything to please them. In 1893, with the help of Colvey, Kakungulu launched his campaign against Bunyoro and Kabalega in particular, who had become a problem to the British. In the same year, he teamed up with a British official, MacDonald, to defeat Ganda Muslims. These retreated to Toro, where they were equally defeated. In 1895, he led a delegation of Kuma. He achieved this with the help of a British force under Carl Everts. The two were exiled to the Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean. Between 1999 and 1920, he moved to Lango, Bugisu, Teso, and Kumam to create an empire for himself in eastern Uganda. In 1901, he established a fort at Bururi for his operations against the Kumam, Itests, Bagisu, and Bukedi. Kakungulu used both diplomacy and military power to weaken and disorganize the societies he came across. He was nicknamed Kabaka of Bukedi by Sir Harry Johnson in recognition of his efforts to bring Bugwere and Bugisu under British rule. Fearing the fame he had built for himself, the British in 1901 attacked his headquarters in Budaka and forced him to withdraw from Mbale, which was also taken over in 1903. By 1906, he had taken over Busoga and was appointed president of the Busoga Lukiiko in 1908 by the British who wanted to please him. He also created the office of Kyabazinga, the paramount chief of the Busoga, and crowned himself the first Kyabazinga of Busoga. In all the areas Kakungulu conquered, he carried out a number of economic developments that made him the darling of the British. But there were cries from the locals that his chiefs were grabbing their land, cattle and sheep. He built administrative posts like in Budaka and Mbale, which were later used by the British as bases. He built roads almost in the whole of eastern Uganda. In Mbale, he built the Bubulo Road, and in Busoga, the Iganga Budaka Road. This is the mobility of administrators and fostered economic development. He also helped to attract Indian and Arab traders to open up trading activities in eastern Uganda. He encouraged the growing of cash crops in Busoga. He, for example, encouraged cotton growing and coffee growing in Bugisu. He also credited with the planting of many Mevule trees and mangoes, and these lined the main roads in eastern Uganda. In all the areas Kakungulu conquered, he introduced the Chiganda model of administration. The area in two counties, sub-counties, parishes. This helped in the development of indirect rule and native administration. In Busoga, for example, he divided the area into 7 counties and introduced Buganda agents and advisors there. In his administration, Kakungulu did not neglect the health sector. He helped set up medical centers wherever he established administrative posts like Budaka Dispensary in Budaka. This improved on the health of the people. He encouraged the British to extend the rail line to eastern Uganda to collect cotton and coffee, and by 1930 the line had reached Tororo. In all this, Kakungulu succeeded basically because of the loyalty of his followers. All the above reforms earned Kakungulu's a lot of admiration from the British, but he was not to remain in the same bed with them for long. Clear testimony that they had been using him as a storage. After some time, he suffered series of demotions and transfers. For example, in 1901, he was demoted from being the Kabaka of Bukedi to the president of the Busoga Luchiko on accusation of bringing chaos and disorder to the region. He was further demoted to a county chief in Mbale and his new headquarters taken over the British. He withdrew back to Buked in 1913, where he spent most of his later years. In 1923, having lost popularity, the British retired him on a pension of €3,000. These developments greatly demoralized and frustrated Kakungulu, forcing him to join a religious sect called Abamalakas, which opposed missionary teaching, white civilization and medicine. In 1929, Kakungulu died a disappointed old man, which was typically of most collaborators. He had not realized his dream of creating an empire for himself. He was buried in Mbale. Nevertheless, by the time of his death, he had done a great job as far as extending British rule in Uganda was concerned.